Welcome to Bunker Brothers. Back with another fantastic episode, and we are so excited, guys. We have had the opportunity to sit down and spend some time with some great people, and we definitely want to introduce them to you. But I am a little bit distracted right now because my dear friend and partner in crime just brought over a pizza and opened the top, and now I'm supposed to focus on religion and God when pizza is on my side.
So you'll hear some chewing.
Yeah, but pizza is a big deal to me. I believe it will be served at the marriage supper of the Lamb, along with haggis.
Or haggis pizza.
Haggis pizza. We're putting in for God. Oh, yeah. That's how it works.
We say God could do anything, right?
Yes.
So
God
haggis pizza is definitely up there.
Can do anything. Although I am putting in also for a kilt instead of a white robe. You think?
You can get a white kilt.
We'll see.
It's close enough.
So here's what we've got going on. We've been doing these head-to-heads with the Bible characters and the 2019 Bible Challenge, and we're going to be back with that, but we have a great opportunity to sit down with someone we'd like to introduce you to. Graham, who is this that's sitting across
They've met me.
us? I know they've met you.
Today we have with us Tyson James from Reasonable Faith, the Goldsboro chapter. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
I met Tyson just a week or so ago, and we got to talking, and I found out he worked for this group, and I said, we've got to have him on the show. Turns out it was a little quicker than I think either one of us was planning on, but it worked out that way.
Well, there's a reason for that. I think that as we see, Tyson James is a family man. I mean, literally a family man. He's got his family with him right now, and I'm impressed.
See, and I do this to get away from my family.
I'm impressed with anybody who is just a man that's wielding his family and just got him they're standing there like you had tucked them both under your arms. They weren't really like that, but I really do respect that. So,
well, thanks for having me here.
Oh, we're glad to have you here.
Yeah.
So, Reasonable Faith, I don't know the connection to the larger organization that you have. So let's go through that a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm the local chapter director, like you were saying, for the Goldsboro area. So Reasonable Faith has local chapters all over the place, basically carrying out the mission of Reasonable Faith on the local level.
Right.
So the mission is to provide an articulate and intelligent, yet uncompromising and compassionate voice for the truth of Christianity in the public arena.
Wow. You said that really, really well. Are you sure you don't want to be a host for Bunker Brothers?
Gotta have my lines.
It sounds like you said that before.
Yeah.
But in addition to being a local chapter director, I actually work for the Ministry of Reasonable Faith. All of our chapter directors are volunteer, but I am on staff as the global chapters director.
Oh, wow.
So I oversee over 140 chapters on 6 continents.
Good job, Graham. I mean, good job, Tyson.
I didn't do anything.
Yeah, so it's just really incredible to work for this ministry. Obviously, it was started and run, basically formed by Dr. William Lane Craig, who is just a genius.
I have watched at least one video, but I've actually seen snippets of him off and on where people have, posted things that have been on those videos. He blows me away. And I come from a more experiential end of approach toward faith, and that doesn't mean that there isn't good logic behind what I believe. In fact, I'm one of those ones that was thrilled to find out that there was a lot of logic to what I already was embracing so openly.
Wait a minute. There's anything about you that's logical?
Absolutely not. I don't think so. The great thing was that when I started learning to look at faith for myself, I was not disappointed. I found that there was so much real hard fact and proof and evidence that what I believe for by faith is still by faith, but it sits in a very, very well-founded foundation.
Yeah.
That's not by accident. I think God designed both the reason and the faith to work in such a manner to allow us to take the leap of faith, but land on something. And I think that's important. I mean, I'm not out floating. I didn't take my leap of faith toward God and I'm just floating constantly in nothing.
Mm-hmm.
No, I took a leap of faith and I found very firm rock on the other side.
Yeah.
Built off of real sense and real truth.
Yeah. And I think, too, for a lot of people, there's something that you have to get clear right away. and it's what the biblical definition of faith is.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah, so a lot of people today, when they use the word faith, it means something like believing something in spite of, contrary reasons or without any evidence at all. That's really not what the Bible is talking about when it uses the word faith. When we talk about faith biblically, it's more synonymous with the word trust.
Yeah, I kind of get what you're saying in that. I kind of do.
Well, here's the thing.
I'll admit that I cheated a little bit, and I actually watched a couple of Dr. Craig's videos today. So I boned up a little bit. That doesn't mean I know anything really, but I did hear him say something very similar to that today.
When you're talking about trust, there's a spectrum there. Your trust can be either blind and you're just trusting in something without any reasons behind it, or it can be reasonable, right? You might have good reasons to put your trust in something.
Right.
Maybe you trust a certain car because you have good reasons to believe the company knows what it's doing when it's creating the car.
I hear a title shot coming up here in just a minute. Are we getting to reasonable faith?
Yeah, it happens to be the name of the ministry.
I've ridden in some cars that Graham has that I have no faith in.
You're talking about my Aztec again, aren't you?
The Aztec is by far the ugliest vehicle ever in the world. And I think it's a proof that God has humor. Moving on. So, but logical faith, but faith.
Reasonable faith.
Reasonable faith.
So we've defined faith. We've talked a little bit about reason.
Yeah.
Tell me what exactly is the definition of apologetics?
Yeah. So I can give you the really technical definition and then just kind of pare it down a little bit.
Give me the layman's definition, because I don't need technical.
So the word apologetics comes from the Greek word apologia, but really it just means reasonable defense. So in Scripture we have 1 Peter 3:15, which says, "In your heart set apart Christ as Lord, always being prepared to give a defense or a rational argumentation for the hope that is in you to anybody that asks, and do this with gentleness and respect." And so that word defense or rational argument is apologia in Greek.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not the word apologize. And I think some people, if they haven't heard the word before,
Yeah.
will think that is an apology, making an apology.
Yeah.
And again, that's just because we word associate quick. Yes, I know it doesn't mean that, but it's not apologizing.
Yeah.
It's not really just trying to explain or explain away faith. It is, as you have said,
Reasoned defense. Yeah.
reasoned defense. We like reasoned defense.
We don't get much of it.
So I like to make the joke that, if you have kids and you ask them to apologize, you're actually telling them to give you a reason for what it is that they've done.
that
when
makes
really
good
what you
sense.
mean when you say apologize is just be sorry for what you did.
Right.
Express the fact that you're sorry for what you did.
Yeah.
The website is amazing, by the way.
Yeah.
I really like the website. It's really well done. The website is reasonablefaith.org, because we didn't mention that a while ago, and we meant to.
Yeah.
And you can actually pull up your chapter, the Goldsboro chapter here.
Yeah, they have a whole listing, a whole chapter directory. So, if your listeners are interested in getting connected to a chapter,
I
wherever they
did
are.
notice there's only 4 chapters in North Carolina.
Yeah, only 4. Yeah.
Let me see. I know there's Goldsboro, and there was one in Greensboro.
Chapel Hill.
Chapel Hill. That one surprised me, I have to admit.
Yeah.
If you're from Chapel Hill, I'm sorry, but that one surprised me.
Well, we live in a state that has a pretty good economy. We've got our college towns, we've got our rural areas, and our state divides itself thought-wise between those two areas, and that's one of the concerns I always have as a father.
Yeah.
I've got kids, and I'm not going to bash the school system, because my kids go to the school system and they learn there.
Yeah.
I'm not going to bash that. I've got many teachers I know. They're great people. They're good people. And my kids have gone to a good school. But there has been a constant undercurrent in their life. And I'm not even blaming the people. You know why? Because I know that our struggle is really with someone. It's not with flesh and blood,
Right.
but with principalities and powers.
Yeah.
Spiritual rulers in high places that try and work through everything they can to plant as much seed of doubt in the hearts and minds of our young people. And we lose so many of our youngsters. And apologetics isn't just for young. I know that. But I'm talking as a father right now. My son and I, we have these conversations, my daughter too, son, but my son especially. And we're all the time talking about, he'll bring something back from school, and I feel like I'm having to defuse this bomb that was just dropped in our lap. One more reason to not believe what the Word of God has to say. And there's such a bent that's been built into the educational process currently to lead people away from that. And I'm not blaming teachers. A lot of the teachers are, many of them Christians, but a lot of them are some godly people, some neutral. But the point is that it's written into our culture right now to disbelieve in God, as though that's the thing, just the thing to do. It's nothing new, but and it's like I find like I'm having to struggle against that.
Yeah. Well, and I have to say I'm very happy I don't have to struggle against that. I am fortunate enough my daughter goes to a Christian private school. Yeah. It's a very good Christian private school, and I'm very happy that basically all she does is church. She goes to school at a Christian school. Yeah. Her friends are all church friends or school friends, which means they're all church friends when you get down to it. And she spends her time away from school at either my church or her mother's church. Mm-hmm. Her mother and I are divorced, but she still spends all of her spare time, regardless of where she's at, in a church.
That's great.
And I have seen her literally, us pull up in this parking lot, and she will be out of the truck running toward the building before I can get the truck put in park. We had to have a serious conversation about that one day, because I said, I'm glad you want to be in there. I want you in there. But let me get the truck parked first,
So I should be trying to rapture practice by jumping up and down in the front yard? Just saying.
I'm not sure what that means.
I'm just saying. Late for the sky.
So Daniel, I'm just going to ask you quickly. You were sharing with me your story about coming to faith and really believing in Christianity, but then looking for the evidence and whether or not there was any good reasons for Christianity.
Exactly.
And you came to realize that there was. And so would you say that was sort of later on in life? Or
yeah, for me, I probably was like 17, 18, 19, where, I think that was, I don't know, for me, biblical archaeology. Yeah. I mean, I just, I got into looking at the sites of things. I found it ironic to find people who would stand there and say that there was no proof for even the Israelites to exist. Oh. and yet so much was being dug up all the time. Yeah. And it was like, I just found it to be ironic.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because, so I attend a church where we have an annual apologetics conference, and this year our keynote speaker is Ted Wright, who is a biblical archaeologist. He has a ministry called Epic Archaeology, so I think you would really enjoy coming out to that and checking that out.
We may have to make a trip.
Yeah, I might comp you guys some tickets.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. That would be great.
But back to the point of, you coming to study the evidence in your late teens, early 20s, I think part of the shame of the American church today is that it doesn't seem like that's part of the church until people search out this evidence later on in life. It's not incorporated into the Sunday schools or the Bible studies or things like that. And so the first time people are ever even hearing of apologetics is when they're struggling with doubts already and when they're searching it out on their own. And suddenly they find, there have been philosophers and theologians and historians and scientists that have tackled these issues. Sure. Why haven't we ever heard about it?
I think that, for me, was interesting that almost all of the things I heard negative, I found was already pre-existing heresy. Yeah. And let me say, in other words, to qualitate that heresy, what I really mean is people have said it before. People have claimed that before. This is nothing new for someone to say that Jesus Christ isn't who he is, or other people. People have said it before. And it's funny because the church continues to rebound even though those things were said. And so I was led to look at, well, why? First of all, why would 12 people, minus one, then plus one, because of the bias of Judas.
Well, maybe plus two.
Why would 12 people be willing to lay their lives on the line? Why would 12 people lay their lives on the line for something that was just a myth?
Or something they made up themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
They weren't making anything off this. There
Right.
was no televangelists back then. And it wasn't easy. And the level of persecution was formidable. It was tremendous. Why would they keep the faith? Well, because they knew the person and they knew it was real.
Yeah.
Well, if it was real for them, how is it real for me? And as I began to look at that, I found a lot of causational links here that were like, oh, so these questions have been asked before. And a lot of things that are being thrown in the face of people today are the same stuff that have been thrown in the face of people in the past. But you're correct, doesn't get discussed a whole lot. And so it's the first time you ever heard of it.
Yeah.
Why does the church not discuss these things? It seems like that would be something they'd want to promote.
I think that's a great question to ask Tyson James, the chapter director of Reasonable Faith.
Are you telling me we need to reintroduce?
People know who he is.
So we're here tonight with Tyson James, who is the Goldsboro director and apparently the chapter's director for reasonablefaith.org. Is that appropriate?
Uh-huh.
That is the website. It's a great website. We talked about it a little while ago. So my question was, why do churches not promote apologetics the way you think they should?
Yeah, I think that's a great question with a lot of answers. I think, first of all, a lot of churches are kind of small and have limited resources anyway.
Okay.
So
especially in this area.
Yeah, so they might just not have somebody who is trained in apologetics who's even able to teach it. Most pastors aren't taught, they're not trained in apologetics in seminary. They're trained in biblical theology. They know how to do exegesis and things like that, but they really don't know how to answer objections.
I don't do exegesis, I just do Jesus.
I've heard that joke before.
And then there's some churches that really have a culture that's against apologetics. They don't see the biblical mandate for it. They think, let's just keep it simple. We just need the Bible. That's it. They're not out in the culture. They're not evangelizing, really.
Right.
That has a lot to do. When you're actually getting out, talking to people, sharing the gospel, and people come at you with questions, suddenly you have to provide a defense.
So that's really the origin, as I understand it, of apologetics is really, and I think that is really interesting. You've said this because you've just linked apologetics with evangelism.
Yeah.
Not often said. I haven't heard people say that much, apologetics and evangelism, but it's about bringing the message and then it's about bringing the message and having a message.
Yeah.
That people can grasp.
Yeah.
And Jesus was like that all the time.
Yeah.
He proved what he said by, well, look at this.
Yeah.
Well, look at that. If this does that, then obviously God does that. Logical explanations. Yeah, some people didn't understand that, but that was on purpose sometimes. Yeah. But most people that were listening, they got it.
Yeah.
He used those things to prove what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And he really did expect that, or God expects us to look at what's around us. Scripture all the time tells us to look.
Yeah.
Look.
Test. Yep.
And test it. Search things out. And I think that some churches really get this idea that if you do that, you're showing a lack of faith.
Right.
Which you said is silly.
Right.
Or you said silly, but you said that's where we're lacking that definition of faith.
It's just, I think it's a very bad misunderstanding of the biblical view of faith. Take the Bereans. The Bereans took what was being told them, and what did they do? They were praised for not just accepting whatever was told them,
right,
but challenging it and testing it against Scripture and making sure that what they were being told was true. Paul, when he's out, in synagogues and preaching the gospel, it says that he was persuading people. He was reasoning with them. Pointing to the evidence, the eyewitness testimony. Jesus himself, what did he say? He said, believe in me, but even if you don't believe in me, believe in the miracles and the works that I do. So he was pointing to something even that outside of himself that proved who he was. He was giving people a demonstration. So that's what we need. Even though your personal faith might be because of some, experience you've had of God. That's good for you for knowing the truth of Christianity. But if you want to demonstrate that truth to someone else, they don't have access to your experience.
That's true. That's true.
So you need
And
to
they can doubt your experience, because we've been taught to doubt people's experience a little bit. Why? Because the 60s happened. Trust me, everything you experience might not be legitimate, sir. Just saying. But we've learned that in our culture, to put a little check on that experiential thing, and look for what's reasonable. Yeah.
One of our key phrases is reasonable and necessary.
That's true.
And reasonable is up to the person that you're talking to, or the person that was involved, or the person writing the statement, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I had a professor, and he used to say something I thought was pretty awesome. He would say, and I'm sure he got it from somewhere, I don't know. But he would say, what is the truth?
Yeah.
And he would say that truth for him was knowledge that was consistent with reality.
Somebody who has not accepted that premise to start with, quoting the Bible to them doesn't mean anything.
Right.
Because it's like quoting Lord of the Rings or, Gone with the Wind or any other book. It says what it says, but that doesn't make it true because they haven't accepted that premise.
That's right. Yeah, that's part of the problem today in the church. We've got a lot of people that are still under the mindset, the Bible says it, I believe it, and that settles it. But that doesn't cut it.
Which is okay till you talk to somebody that doesn't accept that.
Right.
That's very interesting. And I think that, again, brings you back to the evangelistic part of apologetics.
Yeah.
That it really can be a tool that reaches into the needs of the individual. I've had people who have felt like if a person isn't just willing to believe this blankly, then that's just a sign that they're damned. Folks, I can't, I've had people express that kind of thing.
Goodness.
Like if you can't have that kind of approach toward it, then obviously you're not going to make it. And yet had someone witness to them with just a slightly different angle, and they came in and they got saved.
Yeah.
So
if you
how
go
did that
onto our
happen?
website, there's a whole testimonials page.
Right.
And there are hundreds of people who have shared with us their testimonies of how they heard the evidence and arguments for the existence of God and the truth of Christianity.
Right.
And for the first time, they felt like they could truly believe because they had something to ground that belief. And so they're saying, I came out of, alcoholism or drug addiction or, adultery, things like that. These people are sharing their stories with us and saying it was apologetics that brought me to the point where I could give my life over to Christ.
Wow.
Yeah, so apologetics is a great tool. I had a professor that said apologetics is what fills the potholes on the road to the house of Christ.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
I want that on a t-shirt. That's fantastic.
We were doing the show on C.S. Lewis. We got together and talked C.S. Lewis for an hour or so the other night. And one of the things about C.S. Lewis that I mentioned to him was he didn't go from atheist to Christian. He went from atheist to deist, meaning he accepted the existence of God.
Yeah.
And then it took him a few more years to get to say, not only is there a God, but it is the God of the Christian Bible.
Yeah.
And we know how C.S. Lewis ended up.
Yeah.
Which was absolutely fantastic. One of my personal heroes, by the way. But the fact that it took someone even as smart as him to make those steps. Daniel made the point that believing in God, you've only done the same things that the demon and the devil himself have done.
Right.
They believe in God. Yeah. Okay. But what my point was for some people, that's going to have to be the progression.
Yeah.
They're going to have to accept that there is something before they can specify what that something may be.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the people I've seen that would say they were an avowed atheist, a lot of times it's an indoctrination of atheism and not so much a reasoned atheism for themselves. It's been more what they've picked up from, like someone saying, oh, well, I'm something. And they have bits and pieces of it,
Well,
and
there's some people that say they're a Christian that are the same way.
Valid point. Valid point.
They're a Christian because grandmama took them to church when they were little, or mama took them to church when they were little.
But most of the guys that I know that would describe themselves as truly being an atheist, when they got saved, were so passionate because it wasn't so much that they were just an atheist. It's that they love the concrete. They love something that is real and concrete. And they'll defend it to their dying breath. And if they receive Christ, they tend to do the same thing with him. They tend to be just as sold out.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because, so there's famous atheists in the Bible, which is kind of not really true. But it is also true. Paul was not an atheist. He believed God existed. But he sure didn't understand what to do about or with God. He thought God was a tool to punish anyone that wasn't doing what his group wanted.
Yeah.
So, if you could say, well, he wasn't an atheist, yeah, but he was also working for the Antichrist, because the Antichrist works in all the children of disobedience, and he was a child of disobedience at that time. So that was kind of worse in a way.
And by the way, Paul is on his team. That's
Paul's
why he's
team.
talking him up.
Uh-oh.
But here's a guy.
Wait, who's his competition?
Right.
It's
not even fair.
I'm winning right now.
By one round.
But, well, that's all we've had. I'm undefeated.
I'll get you back. I got some guys. I got some power players.
Made some trades.
Got some trades.
Okay.
No, we're not doing any trades. But you got a wild card. You got my wild card, as a matter of fact. And that's up next, by the way.
I found them to be. I found people who have come from an atheistic background. If they come when they come to faith, they come and they have a lot of strength with it.
Yeah.
And it's because, why is that? I'll ask you. You've seen it happen. So why? Yeah. Why is that?
So I'd say there's a few reasons there. For atheists who really studied atheism and the atheist literature for a while, they thought they had really good reasons for their atheism. And so they value the life of the intellect. And so when they become Christians, they know they don't lose that.
Right.
They just found out that they had been deceived by really poor argumentation.
Wow.
And so, in reaction to that, they want to prevent other people from falling under those same errors. And so that's why atheist converts who become Christians can be such powerful.
And when they're atheists, they want to do the same thing. That's why they always seem very angry at Christians or a Christian organization or whatever it may be, is they feel responsible for getting you out from under that mind control.
Yeah.
The way they see it. So when they flip, they do the same thing, just from the opposite point of view.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of times growing up and coming from a family who was a pastoral family, in my reference, one of the issues I always found was some people, you talk to them and they find out, oh, you're from a pastoral family, you grew up in church. Well, that didn't really save me. I got to tell you that much. It didn't hurt, but it didn't get me there.
Yeah.
I've heard him say he learned to speak Christianese and kept cans of religion in his car.
It is absolutely true.
I thought that was a great line.
I could have stayed in the. I'm gonna make this point. I could have stayed in the church and been a church person all my life and been an excellent church person, and I would have died and gone to hell. Yeah. Not because I didn't know that Jesus Christ was real, or believe that he was who he was, but because his agenda and my agenda were a little different. Because
I can sympathize with that.
He wants you to do things his way.
You're not good at that.
I wanted to do things my way and have it look like I was doing it his way, and I was good at that. Yeah. I was gifted. So, having said that, that was as bad as being an atheist to me. Because you have the truth and you're ignoring it because it's more convenient to not, and it's better for you. Some people, I think that's the case of it, but the reality is, you can't pick on people who don't believe in God when people who do believe in God don't do much better. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to pick on them because they're all people in ground and soil that God looks to get into the lives of.
And I think you're hitting on an important factor in a lot of unbelief, and that's not necessarily. A lot of unbelievers will say that they have intellectual hang-ups when those are really a mask for existential or moral issues. They don't want Christianity to be true, because that means they have to submit their lives to some higher authority, and that affects the fun that they can have or the pursuits that they want to pursue. We, as sinners, we don't want that.
Right.
We want to fulfill our fleshly
Well,
desires.
even after you realize the truth, you don't want that.
Right.
I've told the story before on here. I was saved at 16, but from 16 to 37, I didn't do a whole lot about it. I went to church, as Daniel just said. I made it look good. I put on the suit and tie. Later on, it was a kilt. I came to church. I made sure my daughter was in Sunday school every Sunday. I did everything that looked right.
Good job, Graham.
Well, I did good for her.
Mm-hmm. But one thing.
And I failed myself.
Mm.
And as a parent, we'd much rather do for them. I get that. But, and I understood that it was important for her to be there because I wanted her to get the real thing, even when I knew I wasn't. And it's hard to admit that even now, not being that far removed. But, I look back on it now and I go, I said all the right things. I did all the right things, supposedly. I made it look good to the outside world.
Yeah.
But I never convinced myself of it.
Well, I'll tell you what you guys are doing with this show and the enthusiasm that you have for the Word of God now, the conversations that you have and sharing that enthusiasm with other people, I think is a great testimony to how far you've come in your relationship with Christ.
Right. I don't want to go to hell. And I'm determined that it's a bad idea. I believe that it's legitimate and real. I am convinced of that because I believe that heaven is legitimate and real. I believe that since those things are legitimate and real, I'm going to have to really consider that, how it affects me. I also am compelled by the love of Christ that he did do what he's done for me. Now that's experiential more. Certainly it is. What an experience to have.
Yeah.
And I believe in both. I believe in both things. I believe that God wants to be approached in many ways. That it's not that there are many roads to heaven or many roads to salvation, but there's a lot of ways of approaching the truth and coming to realize that as a human, as a person, there's so many ways to experience God. I mean, you can take a Christian song and you can sing it many different ways. We've talked about that. We've talked about the fact that a lot of the
that may have to be a show one day.
The music of let's say the Methodist period, the Wesley brothers didn't have any music. People didn't know what the church was singing, so the Wesley brothers used the tunes they knew. Yeah. Which means that your hymn book is about 2/3 full of pub songs. They were the common songs that they sang. I mean, you're right. I mean, it's a reality because this is what people understood. And
people don't realize that the Star Spangled Banner is a pub song too.
Right.
Drinking song before it was the national anthem.
But the point of that is to say that there's more than one way to approach what Christ is, and it is really because it's not there's more one way to get saved, but it's because God knows us personally. What do you think about that one?
Yeah.
He knows who we are, and His Holy Spirit is working and molding the message to meet us in the way we need it all the time. The Holy Spirit does this. This Word of God says the Holy Spirit goes all over the world, and He convicts the world of sin, judgment, and righteousness. And I'll tell you, so I say of sin because you've done something wrong.
I've got plenty of that.
Right. Of judgment because something's going to happen about what you've done wrong. Something's
I
going to
deserve
happen.
plenty of that.
Right. And righteousness, there's a right thing to do.
That's where I need Jesus.
Right. There's a right thing to do.
See, I have to boil this stuff down to very simple language because I'm not as smart as you guys.
So before we go, we wanted to actually ask about this thing. What about the famous? I know we're just going to impact on the surface, okay?
Yeah.
What about this dichotomy between science and faith? I know it's a simple question for a man who's an apologeticist.
Apologist?
Yeah, pathologist. No, that's not what it is. What about this faith versus science?
Yeah, so a lot of people like to set up this dichotomy, just spelling out the problem that science is one area and there's hard objective evidence that it's tangible, you can verify it, you can repeat it, so people can really grasp onto it as something concrete, as like you said earlier, people like to grab onto the concrete. Whereas a lot of people like to say that, faith is something that's kind of woolly, you believe it for yourself, it might be true for you, but not other people, so they turned it into this subjective, it's different for everybody type thing, and just as long as you keep it private, that's fine for you, but don't bring it into the realm of science that's hard and factual. So there's that divide. But what we've seen, and what you may have discovered, looking at Dr. Craig's debates and things like that, is that science can provide information that actually leads us to the conclusion that God exists and Christianity is true. So I think there's a huge overlap here. So for instance, Dr. Craig is famous for his Kalam cosmological argument. So just to lay it out, it's whatever begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. Since the universe is time, space, matter, and energy, that means the cause must be timeless, spaceless, immaterial, and extremely powerful to be able to bring the universe into existence out of nothing. It sounds exactly like what we mean when we say God, right? So science proves that second premise, that the universe began to exist. So let me spell this out. That means that science can provide support for a premise in an argument with a theological conclusion.
It makes sense to me that it should, because I believe in God as a designer.
Yeah.
If you believe a designer is something you designed, then you believe that there's evidence for the design in the design. I believe that Ford made that Ford truck.
Yeah.
I know that's super simplifying it, but I believe
No, we need it to be simplified. Yeah.
I mean, it's Ford. It's Ford.
Well,
Ford
and
made
you
it.
believe that because they wrote Ford on every inch of it.
That one too.
But it works with your analogy because God created the world and He wrote "I was here" on every inch of it. You look. We were in the mountains last weekend, and we're standing on top of one hill, looking out over a valley at a bunch of other mountains surrounding us. And I looked at Daniel and I said, I don't know how anybody could say they don't believe in a higher power of some sort.
Yeah.
Now I can understand where you go from a Jewish God to a Christian God, to some other God.
Yeah.
But how you can stand there and go, this was an accident, I've never been able to wrap my head around that.
Well, space is the same way for me. When I look at, I've always been a person that studied just space and stars and stargazing and telescopes, and I just loved doing that stuff when I was younger, especially. And you look up at that, and it's just you realize how much is moving on without you, and you realize how much vastness it is. That for you to be a thinking member and be as small as you are in the whole cosmos is ridiculous. It's such a ridiculous premise, just ridiculous. It's so ridiculous, and that ridiculousness of it. Well, I have a really problem with certain words. That ridiculousness of it
it's not ceremonial.
begs an answer. Yeah. It just begs an answer.
Yeah. Yeah, and part of so Dr. Craig wrote a book called On Guard. The first one of the first chapters, I think it's the second chapter, is about the absurdity of life without God. Here we are, we're on a tiny speck of rock on the outside arm of a galaxy out of billions and billions of galaxies, a universe that is so vast. What do we mean at all if God does not exist, right? If God doesn't exist and our lives are doomed to just be snuffed out, on the heat death of the sun and the heat death of the universe, then nothing we do, nothing we've worked towards, no accomplishments we've strived towards have any meaning in the end. Hitler ends up the same as Mother Teresa. The Great Pyramid.
That goes to the moral argument behind the whole thing.
Yeah. So that gets into what do we need if we're going to have ultimate meaning, value, and purpose to our lives? It seems to be the case that two things have to happen. God has to exist, and there has to be immortality. If God doesn't exist, then the universe is going to stop having usable energy. Everything's going to go to nothingness, basically.
That's where the scientists just get.
Well, and what's
Why?
funny, so there's a really cool quote, Robert Jastrow, he's talking about, scientists are climbing this mountain, and, basically the climb of the mountain is the scientific pursuit of, how far back does the universe go? And they climb to the top of the mountain, and they discover that the universe had, a beginning, and they peek over the very top, only to find a group of theologians sitting there the whole time.
When I heard it, it was a group of Baptists. But, we won't go there.
So that's awesome, because I like that picture. If they pull back that cloak that's on it, I mean, it's bad enough our own planet's under quarantine. Thank you, C.S. Lewis. But
did you know C.S. Lewis wrote science fiction?
Yes, I have them.
some of the famous people that were
I missed that one somehow until
some of the famous people who are the backbone to not believing in God. A lot of them had things that they couldn't know or couldn't see, or couldn't get past. Not picking on Darwin, but Darwin's one of them. He sat there boggled. The human eye was blowing his mind. He was just, I don't know if my theory can be legit when you have something this detailed at this level. That's the human eye. What about every other eye? Eyes that see better than ours. Eyes in animals that can see farther than we can.
Yeah.
Specialized.
Darwin didn't even know about DNA and all that.
Well,
you get down to that level,
I'm not a fan of DNA. I'm a fan of RNA. RNA is the one you can't explain. RNA is sort of like the universe goes back to a certain point, and you get that ball of energy and matter, and you have to go, there it is, there it is. How'd it get there? And I go, same thing with RNA, because RNA is what's going to tell DNA to be produced. Problem is, you have to start with all the information intact. You can't be lacking. The information has to be whole and total the first time it was ever authored. The first time it was ever laid down, it has to be whole. How in the world did you ever get saved?
So a little bit of my personal theological background then.
Yeah, I'm curious.
Yeah, so...
Good segue, huh?
Nice segue.
Yeah.
From RNA to my personal testimony. I was raised in a Christian home. My parents, my dad actually studied to be a pastor for a while. My mom was very devout, took us to church all the time. We went through Awana, which was, fantastic.
Awana, Boy Scouts, Royal Rangers, awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Royal Rangers, I haven't heard that one in a while.
Yes.
That's good.
And I was an old school Boy Scout.
Yeah.
We didn't have all the political stuff.
Yeah.
We were actually Boy Scouts.
You sold popcorn.
I sold popcorn. We did a lot of hiking. I ended up with a lot of blisters. Built a lot of campfires. My wife asked me to build a fire in the fire pit one time. She hasn't asked me to do it again, because when I got done, she had a fire. Apparently, in the middle of town, that is not appropriate for your fire to be shooting 6 feet in the air. She asked me for a fire. I built her a fire.
So you were saying that you were...
Yeah, so I was raised in a Christian home. Prayed, a prayer really early that, said all the right things, but that was when I was a child. Didn't really know anything. And then around 10 years old, I'd say I prayed a very sincere prayer, knowing that I was a sinner and confessing that I needed Christ to save me from my sins.
That always impresses me, that anybody that young can get it. Because I started at 16, and like I said, it took me till now to really get it.
Yeah, but I would say though that I don't know whether or not that was the point of my salvation, because anybody that's saved early on, they've probably gone through some ebbs and flows in their faith. I went through some very dark times where I stopped going to church and started living like the world, and I never stopped believing in God or even Christianity. I always knew that Jesus was real and really died for me and really rose from the dead.
Trust me, it's only the people who know that can actually backslide or fail.
Yeah.
No worldling fails the knowledge of God because they don't have that.
Yeah.
Just saying.
So yeah, I bucked against the yoke for a while and joined the military, and the military is a very difficult place to be a faithful Christian if you're not surrounding yourself with godly men and women, not getting plugged into a local church, and not taking advantage of the means of grace. And so I definitely wasn't at that time. But then I deployed to Qatar. And it was in my deployment, I was on a flight crew with a captain who handed me this book and invited me to a Bible study. And it was at that point I read this book. It was called One Thing You Can't Do in Heaven, which turns out to be evangelism. You can't evangelize. Sorry, spoiler alert.
There are so many out-of-work pastors up there.
I'm glad you said that, because I would have been worried for days.
Yeah, but anyway, this book, it included just some rudimentary apologetics, just the most basic outlines of some arguments, but they resonated with me. And it was at that point that I really felt like I knew that I was bucking against Christ with my life, and I needed to drop everything else and study this stuff out. That's really when I started digging into the apologetics.
Well, and that's kind of how this all got started, was I had the same moment.
Yeah. So he mentioned Lee Strobel in his book, Lee Strobel's Case for Christ. I studied that. And then Lee Strobel's book mentioned Dr. Craig, so I bought Dr. Craig's book.
Right.
And then from there, the rabbit hole just got deeper. So
it does, doesn't it?
But it's a good rabbit hole.
That is a great rabbit hole. I'm still in it.
We are too. We started out with a simple phone call that said, "Hey, let's read the Bible together," and now we're doing the YouTube thing and we're doing the Facebook thing, and
and you're still down that rabbit hole. But that's a great, like I said, that's a good one to be down. But you know what? I'm telling you something. The simplicity of what it is, and these guys you surround yourself with, there's some real thinkers in there. It really can be scary.
Yeah.
There's some guys.
There's no thinkers in our group.
There's some
Don't
guys.
make that mistake.
There's some guys that really their thought patterns and depth of mind is wow.
Call them scary smart.
I have to put on waiting.
I would say Dr. Craig's on that list.
He is.
Think so?
Some of the things that I've heard him say and talk about, I have no business clicking play on this video.
Yeah. If you read his scholarly articles, you should go into it with a dictionary.
I've stayed away from them for that reason.
Yeah.
I don't want to put that much thought into it.
That
I can read his popular articles, and his articles are on the website.
So I'm thinking of trying to see about this name of God that I saw on one of the videos. The extremely powerful, uncaused, necessarily existing, non-contingent, non-physical, immaterial, eternal being who created the entire universe and everything in it. And I love how they put that as a name of God. Just if you don't like the idea that this is God, this would be the name for this person.
There you go.
That
I think
is
he'll
a
answer
long,
to that.
long name.
I think he'd raise his hand. Yeah, that's me.
So you were starting to
Well,
get
so
around.
would Daniel, but it doesn't make it true.
So you were starting to get around this apologetics at that time, and that's where you started cutting your teeth on this.
Yeah. So that's when you talk to a lot of you were Brad, you were talking about people who they were brought up in a home. They kind of rode their parents' coattails. It's just what they've been taught, and so that's how they identify. They identify as Christians.
And it sounds kind of like that's where you were.
That's kind of where I was. I knew what to believe, but not why I should believe it. I grew up in churches that didn't have apologetics either. And so it was really at that point that I stopped riding my parents' coattails on the faith and made it my own. I had independent reasons for why I believed what I believe. And a lot of my theology and my thinking changed. It wasn't exactly the same as when I was growing up, but it was maturing, right? I think that's part of the process. Like, our theology should continuously be refined by the reading of God's Word, continuing to study the arguments and evidence for the existence of God. And, as we go along, I think we're going to find that some of the things we believed when we were younger, maybe they can be refined more, maybe they'll completely change. But if we're doggedly pursuing truth, we're going to find God.
It's a valid point, and that's one reason why we emphasize with Faith Bunker the reading of God's Word. I mean, we know that there's plenty of teaching out there, so to speak. We know there's plenty of folk if you have a question about your reading, call us, write us, go see a local pastor.
Yeah.
Go ask some questions. We don't mind you going asking questions. But we're looking at just what the Word of God has to say. And I'm telling you, we'll discover things that I'm telling you, in that one text, we'll discover things that just are mind-blowing in a text, in a section. and you go, is that what it said? Is that what that means? What does that mean?
Or you'll read a story that you think you know, inside and out, like Noah's flood. We all know the story of Noah, right?
Yes.
Until you read it.
But did you know?
And then there's all kinds of things in that story that you did not catch on to.
But did you know that the curse on the earth for man's sake was lifted at the end of the flood?
No, I didn't.
I have actually heard
You've never told me that.
I actually heard pastors get in the pulpit and say, well, we know why the ground has got thorns and weeds in it, bless the Lord, because after all, the earth is cursed for man's sake. And now that I know what I know from reading the Bible, I would say, no, that is not what happened, because God said, I'm done with that. That's not how I'm going to approach man at this time. I'm going to lift that curse. Yeah. And so the curse on the ground for man's sake was lifted in the time of Noah. At the very end. It's written in the Bible. You can't get a better source for the Bible than the Bible. You know what I'm saying? Or Zondervan Publishing.
We're not doing advertisements now. Yeah, I've heard him tell that story a time or two.
Oh yeah,
it's true. Look it up. If you don't believe me, I dare you to read it.
Whenever we have guests, I always feel a little bit bad for them. We've got 20 years of this behind us. Like you said again, we started this because we have these conversations anyway. We might as well do some good with them.
yeah.
So Graham, we have an apologeticist. How's the right way to say that, man?
Apologist.
An apologist.
Yeah.
Told you so.
Man, whatever. I'm not going to cut that. That's funny because I can't believe I can't say it right. We have an apologist here. Bound that we have some questions. I mean, real questions. Graham, what is a question that you have that's been gnawing at you about faith and the world and all these things? I mean, we might as well use them.
Well, absolutely. He may not come back again after that. That's always our problem, is we can get somebody for once, just have them come back.
So what is it that chews on your bone?
One of the things that I always found interesting was the historical Jesus as opposed to the biblical Jesus, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
We know Jesus from the Bible, but what is there historically? We're both history buffs.
Yeah.
And so you look into it, and I've read a couple of books on it, and I've tried to educate myself, but since you're here, I'm going to ask you.
Yeah. So, yeah, if I could just delve in here.
Absolutely, please do.
One of the things that we talk about a lot is the historical evidence for Jesus. First of all, there's some people today that don't even believe Jesus was a real person in history. But there are no real New Testament historians teaching in universities, accredited universities today, that believe that. The evidence is just too overwhelming that he was a real person who lived in first century Palestine and had a ministry of signs and wonders and teaching. And so the people that reject the historicity or the historical Jesus, they're really the flat earthers of history.
Oh, God.
Wow.
Yeah.
God,
That's
I really
rough.
like that you said that. I've got a few of I got somewhat I know, but yep. Conversations with Emma. Really
Maybe I'll soften that to fringe. They're the fringe.
Nope, I'm not. Nope, I like it how it already was said. Keep going.
Okay, so what is the evidence for Jesus? Well, you know, a lot of Christians, they'll say, well, I just believe the Bible is sacred. But historians don't approach texts as sacred or anything special. They'll just apply their tools to the Bible as regular historical documents and see what we can get out of that. And what we find is that the best documents for any information on Jesus are, in fact, the New Testament texts. Those are the earliest independent sources of information that we have on Jesus. So anybody that asks you for non-biblical sources for Jesus because maybe they're less biased or something, they're actually asking for worse sources because they're later, they're handed down.
Academically,
They're worse sources. So the best information is actually in the Bible. Now, a lot of people say, well, how can we trust the New Testament writings? Weren't they all Christians? You know, wouldn't they have a bias? Well, what's funny is using the tools of history, it doesn't matter if the sources are biased. We can actually get around the bias to find what is most probably historical. So if you've got 10 sources and they're all independent, but they're saying the same thing just from different angles, maybe including different details here and there, even if they're biased, you can say with a high degree of certainty that that was actually what happened.
This is true. We understand
there
this.
was an event there.
Oh,
Yeah.
see, we understand this from a law enforcement perspective.
Yeah.
A gunshot will happen. A gunshot. Okay, and there might be eyewitnesses. But how people perceive, their perceptions, their feelings may flavor the story.
Yeah.
This person over here believes that the guy that got shot was the bad guy. This person over here believes the guy that was doing shooting was the good guy. This guy over here believes another thing. You might not be able to determine what happened or who really was morally at fault in that, but guess what you can determine? There was a shooting.
Yeah.
Somebody shot him.
One of the things we've joked about is in any argument, any discussion, there's always 3 points of view. Yours, mine, and the truth. Because the way I see it is not the way you see it, and neither one of us may be telling the exact truth because of the way we're coloring it through our own filter.
Yeah.
But that's a simpler version of what he just said.
Yeah.
So, and I look at it the same way, like, when you can triangulate the truth, or put it like that. I mean,
Yeah.
If you have more than one angle, you can look at it from there. We used to do the fires in the mountains. You have fires, you have fire towers. Again, some of our guys are firemen out there, so you guys get this. If you have a fire tower and you have a fire, more than one fire tower radio is in, you can tell which angle from that, and you can take the transmission from each one of those locations, from where they see it, and you can cross those over, you know the fire is right there. Now, you can't see the fire, you don't know the fire is real, but you know where it's at exactly, because eyewitnesses can give you the bearing for it. And you're saying that when you have the events of the scripture, it is a good testimony.
That's a great analogy for the biblical evidence.
Leo guys appreciate that. Those guys fighting forest fires.
Yeah, and for anybody interested in more of that approach, J. Warner Wallace, I don't know if you've heard him, but they call him the cold case apologist.
Wow.
He was a cold case detective, and he wrote some books called Cold Case Christianity and Forensic Faith.
Wow.
And he has this whole ministry kind of around applying his cold case detective skills to
I
think I sent you one of his videos one time, actually.
Yeah, I think I didn't get the.
You don't get around to looking at a lot of things I send you.
I try, man. I try.
Yeah. So going back to the historical evidence for Jesus, then, what we find when we apply these historical tools just to the New Testament text as regular documents, not treating them as sacred or anything, we find that both Christian and non-Christian historians actually agree on a few facts, and they're really important. So, number one, that Jesus was a real person who was crucified by the Roman authorities and buried in the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea. So they actually agree that we know the name of the person in whose tomb Jesus was buried, which is kind of cool.
Also on your team.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, he's on his team.
Joseph's on my team.
He was my wild card, and he stole him from me.
Okay, so there's fact number one. Fact number two, his tomb was found empty following his death by a group of women followers.
Right.
So most historians will agree on that. Number three, there were groups and individuals at different times and different places that experienced appearances of Jesus alive after his tomb was found empty.
Right, right.
And so how they explain, what those appearances were, different people have different hypotheses, but everybody pretty much agrees that those, people really experienced appearances. And then four, the disciples came to sincerely believe that Jesus had risen from the dead.
That's true.
Which wouldn't be the case if they were the ones that concocted a story and just had some kind of collusion.
And they probably wouldn't have all but one died for it.
Yeah, yeah.
When you consider that of the 11 left, all of them but one actually died a martyr.
Yeah, persecuted, martyred, for sure. So you've got these four facts that even non-Christian historians largely agree on. And so the question is, well, how best do you explain those facts? Those are historical. Those aren't supernatural in themselves, right? It doesn't take a supernatural event for Jesus to be executed and buried for his tomb to be found empty.
Right.
There are even natural explanations for appearances or people sincerely coming to believe something. But put all those together, and I think the explanation that fits best all of those facts is the one that was given by the disciples themselves, which was that there was a supernatural resurrection of Jesus.
Right.
Well, see, and the empty tomb has always fascinated me because that is the one thing that you can't fake. Now, they could take the body and move it.
Yeah.
But my thought on that, being a security-minded person, was if that happened, we would know about the death of those 2 Roman guards that were standing guard, because they wouldn't have lived very long.
Sure.
They'd have probably died and been chunked in the tomb themselves.
People imagine that ancient cultures didn't keep track of things. That is not true. Much of the information these cultures had, they kept meticulous accounts of things. It was ridiculous. You got even in ancient Mesopotamia, finding hunks of rock where they have meticulously written exactly how much grain came off that field. It made that much grain. There it is. I mean, it's ridiculous.
We recently found a shopping list.
People, right?
From Herculaneum, I think it was.
Exactly. I mean, and the reality is that cultures like that actually did a very good job keeping record. Some of the cultures that were around, their records, sometimes we may not have a lot of their records, but we got to remember, invaders did sack Rome a few times.
Yeah.
So and burn some of their libraries as well.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have depletion of information because it gets destroyed, or you have it invaded by a group of people who can't read anyway, and they come take over the whole world, and they set up all their little kingdoms, and then they have to figure out and find some people who can read Latin to know what in the world's going on half the time. That it's important for us to know that there is a real historical base and real grounded event that happened. God is a God of history, right? We believe that because he invented it.
They call this the scandal of Christianity. That Christianity is anchored in an actual historical event that can be falsified, hypothetically. Like if they could find the bone box of Jesus or something, well, then he didn't rise from the dead, right?
And every so often they will find one.
Yeah.
And ladies and gentlemen, I want to let you know, there wasn't one person named Jesus. There were several people named Jesus.
Yeah, it was a common name.
Well, it was because it's the same way. Who else was named that?
Well, I called you one day and
the
said
name,
they found...
The name Joshua is the same name.
It's the same name, yeah.
Yeshua, that's the same. It's not uncommon. Yeah. So they'll go, oh, we found Jesus' tomb. Yeah, you found a Jesus tomb. Yeah, I bet you'll find some tombs with my name on it somewhere. Yeah. I am still alive. Yeah. Although I found the obituary for a Daniel Audette somewhere in St. Louis, and it's not me.
He's still talking. He's alive.
But they do.
There's
this
no
thing.
resurrection here.
Well, we found the burial. Yeah, you found a box or you found some bones, and yeah. But my question is, was the body crucified before it died? Does it show scarring and damage? Can you forensically tell me that this person died this way?
Right,
and the answer was well, the death of this man is written well. It is scientifically written well, thanks to certain biblical writers, including Luke.
Oh, Luke.
Luke. Yeah. Luke's my man.
Been called
you hadn't talked about anybody
a historian of the first rank.
You know what? Luke was a historian, but he had the apologetic bone, right? He really did. He didn't mean to. He was just about documenting the truth. Yeah. That's just write it down. Hey, you've heard what you believe. Now here's an account of it. Yeah. That's apologetics, is it not?
Yeah, he interviewed eyewitnesses. He was a detective, basically.
A
journalist.
I told you that Luke was awesome.
and
on Team Thunder for the 2019 Bible
Third
Challenge.
One you pulled off of his team, by the way.
My lineup was looking good.
Today it is. I'll give you
ringers.
Okay. So yours has been Jesus.
I still win.
No. I have to ask the.
We've had one competition. I won it. So.
It's my turn to ask the question.
All right.
My question, and it's the one that gets asked me very often, right? So it's the one we deal with the most. And you knew for before. It's nothing new. And I want to take a spin on it real quick for you. Please forgive me for bringing up the oldest one in the book, and it's just that the why is it so bad? Why do bads? I mean, if God is God and things suck so bad, I know Jesus is the answer to that, but that's because I've experienced that and I've seen that. But I'm just saying, just people ask that all the time. If God is who He is, why? I'm just gonna say it my way. If God is who He is, why do things suck so bad?
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know?
so this is often called the problem of evil and suffering, right?
It is a problem.
Yeah, a lot of people, they kind of have the start of an argument in their mind, like, well, can't God get rid of all evil? And doesn't He want to get rid of all evil and suffering? If He does, then why do we see the suffering around us? Why do we see pain? Why do we see children dying of cancer and, animals burning to death in the forest and things like that? Doesn't that seem unnecessary? But the problem with that is nobody can show that it's unnecessary, and nobody can show that God doesn't have some morally significant reason for allowing those things. What I like to point to is this counter argument that's been offered by a philosopher named Alvin Plantinga called the free will defense. Okay, so it goes like this: if it's even possible for God to create people with free will, then He can't cause them to freely do what is good and true and choose the right all the time.
That's true.
So creating creatures with free will allows for the possibility of evil and suffering in the world. If it's even possible for God then to exist alongside creatures with free will, then it's possible for God to exist alongside evil and suffering. So right there, you've got a formation of a solution there. And people say, well, why should we believe that God can't make people freely choose? And I say, well, let me ask you something. Can God make a married bachelor?
I know the terminology just doesn't work.
No, I mean,
given definitions, you can't make that work.
No.
Okay, so here we.
Although in some marriages we've seen it feels that way, right? No, but yeah, no, we can't.
So I would say that's right. God cannot make a married bachelor. Does that mean he's not omnipotent? No.
No.
That just means that a married bachelor isn't a thing.
Right.
God can't do the logically impossible because the logically impossible aren't really things at all.
So that's great because you said that, because people are like, oh, the old hat. Well, if God's God, could He make a rock He couldn't lift? And if He can make a rock He can't lift, then He's not God.
Right.
And I'm always like, dude, He made a rock He couldn't lift and dropped it on His Son. Get over it. And that's pretty tough, because that weight dropped on His Son hard, and it killed Him, and He resurrected from it. That's cool. But I just say that's what you're saying is the logic behind that question is lacking, isn't it?
Right.
That's where you're going with that. That it lacks logic. It sounds really good.
So, and bring it back full circle to the problem of evil and suffering. And so the free will defense. And so people ask, well, why can't God make people freely choose right all the time? Well, it's because of the nature of free will itself.
I was about to say it's not free will.
Right. It's like a married bachelor, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to say God can cause people to freely choose the right all the time, right? So if...
Well, I think that's like, I think the word make them do it instead of cause them to do it may be a little stronger in that case, or at least it is in my mind.
Yeah.
Because you can't make me do something if I have free will.
Right.
But
I like to say, no matter how long it takes until judgment, when that day comes, people will be saying too soon.
Yeah.
It could be It could be a year from now.
That's
It could be a million
true.
years from now.
Yeah.
They'll say too soon.
Yeah, and that's human nature.
Yeah.
So we've really enjoyed talking to Tyson James. It has been a real pleasure to talk with you. Before we go and leave you, because it's gonna be hard to do so. Getting to pick people's brains is one of my favorite things.
If you're
I'm in
willing
the
to
area,
come, if you're willing to come back, we'd be glad to have you.
Well, it's good to know that there is a local chapter here in Goldsboro, North Carolina. And how would they get in touch with you about that?
Yeah, they can go to the website, reasonablefaith.org, look on the chapter directory. Each chapter has a landing page of their own, so you can find out chapter details, meeting details, contact information, emails there. I also have a Facebook page. You can just look up Reasonable Faith Chapter Goldsboro, North Carolina, and it should pop up. And so I keep people up to date on events, topics we'll be covering, good discussions on there. And most of the chapters have a Facebook page where they keep the conversation going even after they meet.
Great.
And if you can't find him any of those places, he's also in the Faith Bunker.
Yeah.
That is true. That is true.
He is
Bunker Brothers.
He is one of the Bunker Brothers.
Yeah.
So
thanks for having me, guys. This
thanks
is really
for
fun.
coming. I do hope you'll come back
Absolutely.
again sometime.
We've really enjoyed it. I know. Whenever I think of these questions, they sound so lame to me. When I ask a guy who's heard these questions, I thought about this earlier.
Yeah.
It's like asking a famous baseball player, "So that ball's round, huh?" Yeah, that ball's round.
Or my favorite one is asking an author where he gets his ideas. He's never heard that question before.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like everybody he's ever met has ever asked him that question.
Well, Ravi Zacharias, at the end of his talks, he'll usually have a Q&A. And one time somebody asked him a question. He said, "Let me just stop you." He's like, "Before I come to these talks, I can write down on a piece of paper 24 questions, and those will be the exact questions people ask in the Q&A."
Right,
and
right.
That's something that
Except his accent's a little bit different.
yeah, I don't have an Indian
I
accent.
actually like listening to him. He's one of the ones I do enjoy listening to.
I was almost embarrassed to ask the one I asked because it is the one I hear the most from people.
But it is the most
and you asked about
humanistic
Jesus,
argument.
so I mean, those two get spoken a lot.
Those
from
are
people.
the two big ones, I think.
Well, I think, on a lay level, we need to cover those questions because people will have those questions till the end of time.
It's true.
We need to cover them over and over again.
Well,
It's true.
and not only do you get asked them a lot as a professional apologist, but
You said the word right. I'm jealous.
I can say ceremonially too, but
You don't know he was actually practicing in the bathroom for days.
not days. We didn't work out this yesterday.
No, that was the episode of the word
Ceremonially. He was trying to say ceremonially unclean and could not get ceremonial
We're
out.
just
And that's
not-
where our ending blooper
It
started.
wasn't gonna work.
That one started after we do the closing of the show. We usually will put a blooper on
You're
the
next.
end.
You're next for the bloopers, by the way. So
Am I? Okay.
yeah, you had a really
I
good
give
one.
you plenty to work with, so but you get asked those questions ad nauseum, I'm sure. But for me or somebody who is not a professional apologist, it may catch me off guard.
Yeah.
Because I don't have the facts readily at hand that you do, just because you do it all the time.
Yeah.
If somebody asked you a question about prisons, you wouldn't have a clue.
Not a clue.
But come talk to me, and I'm going, really? That's the question you want to ask me? Of all the interesting things we could talk about, and you want to talk about the death penalty, because nobody ever wants to talk about the death penalty. We haven't done anything with it in 10 years.
Or my favorite
Yeah.
question: does it hurt to get pepper sprayed? Well,
yeah.
does it hurt to get tased?
That stuff works.
Does it hurt to get tased?
So yeah, I know where he's coming from. We appreciate that you get asked those questions a lot.
Yeah, we appreciate that, and we really are thrilled that there are people who honestly take the time to explore those questions and to bring that to the knowledge of us, not of us guys.
Guys like us.
Well, I tell
Guys
you what,
like us.
it's a labor of love. You get teachers who talk about that moment where the kid who doesn't seem like they are catching on to anything, but
Or the
suddenly
adult that doesn't seem to catch on.
well,
anything.
I'm trying to keep it kids here, but they you say something one way and it just clicks and the light bulb comes on and suddenly they get it, and that is so rewarding.
I understand. I was that kid.
And for me, apologetics is sort of the same way because, the church has been avoiding it for so long that there are people from, cradle to grave that they're not hearing this stuff and they hear it for the first time, and suddenly it's like the eyes get big and Jesus is so much more real to them.
Yeah.
And suddenly their relationship is flesh and blood and, full of the Spirit. And that's what I love about this, vocation, is just being able to share that enjoyment of having a rational and reasonable faith and knowing a God who is real.
And when you talk about it, you can tell that you get excited. about it. It goes deep with you. We can tell that.
I feel it. It's fantastic. Guys, this is we've just really had a great time with Tyson James talking, and we just want to encourage you to reach out and grow and learn and embrace what God has for you, and embrace this context of faith, which is putting our trust in something that is real and solid as can be. And God says, go ahead and give me a test. Go ahead, see if I can handle it. And I think that's important to see that God can take the questions that we have of him. He's not ashamed to be asked questions.
That's right.
He's not ashamed of our doubt. He's not ashamed of our questions. He is a God who answers. And I think our biggest issue is taking the time to take the question to him and let him give us the answers. And I think that's a big thing for me. And then listening, a big thing for me. But
You know not.
right. We want to just thank you for listening. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to this evening. And we ask that you would like and subscribe and check out the rest of our wonderful podcasts. We got some great stuff coming up. I know we have a podcast that's going to be coming up about more of our lineup of the 2019 Bible Challenge.
Yes.
Where I am going to kick your biblical tail with some awesome ringside feats of glory.
The next matchup is Joseph of Arimathea and King Josiah.
Okay, I take that back because Joseph of Arimathea. But I feel that Tyson James has given me new life for Joseph of Arimathea because as he said, this is. Thanks so much for listening, guys. This has been real. Have a good one. Bye. So you guys expect me to do more talking. I'm going to cut this right here. You're expecting me to do a lot of talking while you chew on pizza. When is my turn for pizza and you're the talker?
Right now. So get you a piece of pizza. And don't cut this. At least make it a blooper at the end.
I'll thin it down a little.